There's much more exciting and important archaeological discoveries that are being made, like Göbekli Tepe, which need more space.
And there's some pyramid-like structures or hills in China as well, right?
There's thousands of pyramids in China. Xi'an, the province of Xi'an, is just the moment you land there from your aircraft, you're seeing pyramids everywhere. I've been
Really?
there. There are certainly hundreds and hundreds of them, distributed across fields, vanishing off into the distance in all directions. They've been terraced and used as agriculture. The local farmers grow crops on them. I went there with Chinese archaeologists. They haven't excavated a single one, not one.
Why not?
They said, we don't have, this was nearly 10 years ago I was there, they said they probably got the money now, but they said then they didn't have the money. They said, we're an old country, we don't mind if we wait 200 years to get to grips with this.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And the famous tomb of the first emperor is part of this pattern. It is also a pyramid. It has also not been excavated. The Terracotta army around it has been found.
The Terracotta army is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It was on display somewhere, wasn't it? Where you can go and see it live?
Yeah, they did some kind of travel
I'd want to see that thing. I'd want to look at those things. What a bizarre concept. Now, these pyramids, so this one that this emperor was buried in that had the Terracotta army, was that a pyramid as well?
It is a pyramid.
It is.
Absolutely. It's a man-made pyramid. The Terracotta army was buried around its edges, not in the pyramid itself.
So the army was there to protect him?
Yeah, to protect his soul into the afterlife seems to have been the idea. And then there's a mythology that's come down that within the pyramid is a lake of mercury, that there are mechanical devices in there which will fire arrows at you if you go in. That there's a whole story about how intensely protected it is, and up to this day it's not been excavated.
That's so crazy. How could someone leave that alone?
And you know, even major archaeological sites like Tiwanaku in Bolivia, for example, you'll find that only about 2% of the site has been excavated. I don't know how we can draw inferences about the whole site from a tiny little fraction like that. And that's the problem, I think, with archaeology, and it's why we have to consider another way.
We're looking at an image of the Terracotta army now in front of this pyramid, and it is spectacular. Now that I think about it, I don't think that was on display anywhere. I think maybe they had a couple of them.
They brought some of them. They came to the British Museum. There were a number of museums.
But it's so much bigger than I thought it was.
Yeah.
I mean, how many? There's thousands.
Yeah.
There's thousands of these terracotta figures.
Absolutely.
And this pyramid was made out of what? Was it stones?
Ramped earth, mainly.
Okay. So they just sort of shaped the ground. They just dug around it.
Yeah, they brought in earth and turned it into a pyramidal mound over the top.
But it wasn't. It's
not massive stone blocks. It's not massive stone. That's why they can grow crops on the sides of some of these pyramids.
Wow, how weird.
Yeah.
So they would build these giant mounds of dirt and then dig holes in them and support them. And
they probably created the interior, subterranean as they were building the whole thing over it. Yeah.
And then just stack dirt on top of it.
Yeah.
Wow, what a weird way to make a house.
Yeah, and then we have to consider this with archaeological sites all around the world, is that any site may actually not be the product of just one culture, but may have been reworked and worked over and used by many different cultures over many different periods.
Stunning to me. I found out about this because of a friend of John Anthony West who was here with him. He showed me, he lives in China, and he was showing me some video of it. And I was like, how do I not know about this? I had no idea there was this many of them. Also, here's one that's exposed. What's this one?
Controversial ancient pyramids of China.
That one looks exposed. It's
and that one
stone.
looks blocky. Yeah.
Well, that is another thing about China that we just don't have a clue. When we think about the age and scale of things, we're so silly. We've only been around since 1776 is when the country was established. It's not really that long ago. You're dealing with China. You're dealing with literally thousands of years of civilization, all rising and falling and taking place and adapting and growing, all in this one area. That's still, in our eyes, in a lot of ways, it's kind of behind, right? I mean, they're behind environmentally. They're behind when it comes to human rights.
Consider this. The Portuguese, in the late 1400s, have rounded the Cape of Good Hope, and they've entered the Indian Ocean in their little ships. They've entered the Indian Ocean, and they actually establish a huge empire. They go to Malacca. They go all over the place, okay? The seas are open to them. If they had come 40 years earlier, they would have encountered the Chinese treasure ships. ships that were 50 times larger than the little caravels that the Portuguese were sailing in. Vast, you know what the Chinese did at that time? They went through a period where they felt they just wanted to give gifts to people. And they put together these huge fleets carrying incredibly precious gifts, silks and ceramics, and they took them all around the Indian Ocean and they just gave them to people.
Wow.
So off the coast of East Africa and in East Africa, you can find remains of this pottery from this episode. And then a Chinese emperor came along and he closed the doors, burned all the boats, shut everything down, and didn't let anybody speak to China for 200 years.
Whoa, what a...
Well, he felt that it was time for the Chinese culture to turn inward.
Yeah.
And they were afraid that their ancient culture, on one hand, there might have been maybe a laudable motive in that they were concerned that the ancient culture was going to get contaminated by too much contact with degenerate cultures from other places, and that was a factor in it.
That constant desire to maintain the current situation.
It's human. We have to say it's some kind of human nature.
Yeah, for sure. Those Chinese pyramids are still blowing my mind.
They blow my mind as well.
I just can't believe they haven't been excavated.
It's an eerie, spooky scene. I mean, I recommend anybody to go to Xi'an and just it's incredible how many of them there are. Wow. And how unexplained it all is. And it's, again, it feeds into my general point, is we don't remember our past.